I can tell you 1000% hands down, it is extremely dangerous to be around people who do not see you well and who do not think of you highly. When you are in the process,
can't keep going back to what I used to know.
Happy Sunday, beautiful people. So I want to have a transparent moment with you guys. As somebody who is teaching others how to shift their mindsets, how to tap into their identity, their God identity, how to stop procrastination, how to get out of your own head and self-sabotaging yourself and all of those things, I want to be very clear. It is coming from a person who has had to do it and is still doing it in my own life. But one of the things that I've learned in my process of owning and operating my first company, starting my second company, raising 4 children. I have my oldest is going to be 19. The 2 in the middle will be 16 and 14. And then my youngest is 20 months, almost 2 years old. Having this life, being a mom of 4 of so many different ages, and just life, right? Just business life and personal life and all the things. I can tell you 1000% hands down, it is extremely dangerous to be around people who do not see you well and who do not think of you highly. When you are in the process of transforming your life, of shifting and elevating your thinking, your behaviors, your patterns, when you are in that process, if you are not around people who support that, and I mean support it, okay? I'm not just talking about people who, give you ear candy. I'm talking about people who genuinely want to see you thrive, genuinely want to see you do well, genuinely want to see you reach the higher heights that God has set aside for you to reach. When you are not around those types of people and you're around the opposite of people who give you ear candy, but you see their microaggressions. You say something that's encouraging and they immediately see the negative and you see it on their face. We have to remember that misery and joy are both contagious. The danger in that is that, well, one, we have these things called mirror neurons, right? And so if we're always constantly in an environment with others who are mirroring back to us discouragement, limitation, lack, delay, and hindrance, if we are constantly in environments with others who are showing back to us their disapproval of our growth, by default, if you're not careful, you'll start taking on that disapproval for yourself. And let me stress this a little bit more. It's not just that you might take on these thoughts. By default, you really are a sum total, not just of your decisions, but of your environment. And whatever environment you are in, you start to take on the thoughts and the beliefs of that environment. How do we know this? Well, it's around us every day. If you hang around people that are old, that are from the hood, that have hood mentality, then you start to become a little more hood, even though that might not be your normal behavior. But then let's flip it. You put yourself in a environment that gives you all the opportunities, that gives you all the open doors, and all of a sudden you start to think a little different. I've shared this in another video before, where when I was about 19 years old, I was walking in this beautiful little town that I found by accident, behind these 2 young ladies who at the time might have been maybe a few years older than me. I was 19, so they might have been 21, 22 at the most, right? And they were talking about which vehicle they wanted to buy. And the girl kept saying, I'm really not sure if I want the Bentley or the Benz. And it was the tone and the energy and the effortlessness that she was talking about these things in. And in that moment, I was very aware that her environment supports that thinking. And that's why it's easy for her to just say, the Benz or the Bentley. We'll see what happens. She ain't say the Benz or a Toyota. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing wrong with Toyotas, but you get my point, right? I'm currently in school. I decided to go back to school to finish and complete my psychology degree. And it's probably been the hardest thing for me to do. Not the work, by the way, right? Not the work. The work is not difficult, but to wrap my head around the idea that I am actually capable of earning multiple degrees, of actually becoming a doctor in this space, of exceeding that in this space almost feels abnormal. And I had to start asking myself, where did I get this idea from that I wasn't capable of doing this? Where did I get this idea from that I wasn't smart enough, intelligent enough to do this? I was always encouraged to be creative because, well, I am a creative person. And the way I think and how I process things is very creatively. However, simply because you're creative does not then immediately subtract from your level of intelligence when it comes to logic, when it comes to book smarts, right? When it comes to obtaining multiple degrees, right? I was encouraged to be creative almost to the extent, I'm saying almost, but truly, let me stop sugarcoating it. I was encouraged to be creative from the tone and from the space of that's all you're good for. I want y'all to hear that. If that's what you are, like, just be that. Don't try to be everything else. And so going into higher education seemed unsafe, unrealistic, unattainable, seemed wrong in some way. It seemed as though I should not be doing that. And why I share this is because, again, we have to ask ourselves, where do we even get these beliefs from, these ideas, these seeds? Where do we get this from? Well, when you are in spaces with people who don't see in you the capability or the capacity to do beyond what they think you can do, this is where it comes from. Now, I'm not saying we're blaming everyone else. We're not pointing the finger at everyone else, because you still have to take full responsibility for the choices and the decisions that you make and the things you choose to believe in. But I also believe it's important for someone like myself to let you know that you get to decide. And if you no longer want to have a challenge in these areas, if you no longer want to combat against this opposition that is pressing up against you, I'm going to say it this way, because I said this in one of my accountability meetings. I said, I realized that there are challenges and hindrances that we face that we don't have to face. Meaning, there are times where we put ourselves in situations and circumstances that cause us to repeat and replay the same pattern of brokenness, dysfunction, pain, self-sabotage, simply because that's just all we know and it's something we're familiar with. So if you no longer want that to be the challenge, then I encourage you to shift your environment. Get from around people who don't see the best in you. And if that means walking alone for a season of your life, you are better off. And that does not mean that you hold up barbed wired fences, to never let people in. No, but it does mean that you need to use wisdom and discernment to identify when somebody's really rocking with you and when they're not. And you have to not be afraid to say, you know what? I'm going to go over here and do what I got to do. When I teach about mindset, I also include the component of environment, because you are a sum total of your environment. And if you're in the process of shifting how you think, what you believe about yourself, then you need to be in environments that support this new idea. It makes it a lot easier for you to be able to go through the process of renewing yourself, renewing your mind, renewing your behaviors and your patterns, shifting and changing out of the old and coming into the new. You have to put yourself in the new as well. One of the things I've just learned over time, I'm 40 years old, okay? There are so many life lessons that I had to learn by stepping out and doing the thing that wasn't the norm. There's so many lessons I had to learn, so many pitfalls I fell in, but also dug myself out of, because I now get to tell you firsthand, I'm telling you, if you want your journey to be a little bit easier, get from around the people that want to keep you right where they met you. Get from around people who cannot see beyond the narrative that they've held you in for so long. Get from around the familiar spirit. Get from around comfort and familiarity. Get from around it. Again, If you're in a healthy dynamic with your family or close friends or people who've known you for years, then this is not for you, because you already have a healthy support system that's going to help you grow. But if you don't have that by default, if that's not your mainstay, then you have to now go out, rest, be in the season of doing this a little bit by yourself, and then intentionally start meeting those who support this new that's happening in you. I really hope that I encourage you, because I'm telling you, part of why I even brought up the whole schooling is because I found myself battling with myself mentally with self-sabotaging. Even my oldest daughter said, "Ma, you're trying to self-sabotage yourself." Because when I have a paper that's due, or when I have something I need to complete, I wait till the last minute to get it done. And I'm like, why do I keep doing this? Now, do I get it done? Sure, I do. But believe it or not, I've been doing this since high school. I've been doing this for a long time. And it's time that that pattern no longer repeats. To leave this on a positive note, I can tell you firsthand that I did everything I'm telling y'all to do. I had to get around others who see excellence in me. I had to get around others who are not so familiar with me that they immediately held me bound to past experiences. I had to get around people who saw the greatness in me and then wanted to support that, and genuinely wanted to support that. And now I have that. And I'm talking about even in my friendships. I'm trying to tell you, I have settled for so many things in my life. I have played small in so many ways. And even in my playing small, I was still able to achieve some pretty great things. And even in the greatness that I was achieving, I still had a hard time grabbing hold and taking ownership of those experiences. I was just like, oh, I would play it down. I would belittle the experience. I would make it seem like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just that. My first company I ran was a pastry company, okay? And we specialized in organic and non-GMO desserts. It grew into catering. It grew into me doing weddings, right? And I remember when I started to provide desserts for the Tyler Perry Studios, this was already coming from a place of already providing certain things for the HBO building and for high-end luxury brands that wanted to have a more exclusive item, food item, dessert item that everyone couldn't get. But in the midst of all that, I still could not value it to the extent that I should have. And every time I went to share the good news with someone I thought was safe to share it with, and their response was, "Oh, nice. Okay, well, good for you." And because I did not, right? We talk about those mirror neurons. I was excited, but I was almost afraid to be too excited, because I was like, well, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe everybody's doing this. And come to find out, everybody ain't doing that. Okay. But it was so difficult for me to hold on and be overly excited for myself, for something that God had given me the ability to do. Which, by the way, let me say this. I said earlier in the video that you're going to be in a season of walking alone. Let me be very clear. You're never alone, okay? Even if you don't have humans rocking with you right away, God will send you people. I promise you he will. And he's always with you. And that is not a churchy thing to say. I'm telling you that was what was my comforter, right? Which is who he is. That's part of who he is. That was my comforter in the process and the seasons when I was walking by myself, when no one else understood me. When I say no one, I'm talking about the naysayers. Because come to find out, you get up here on these social medias, you'll find your people. I say all of that to say, listen, if you want your journey of breaking out of your old patterns, old thinking, old language to be a little bit easier, then I encourage you to get around people who want to see the new in you, who support the greatness in you, and who don't put limitations on you simply because they can't see it for you or can't see it for themselves. There's so much I could say. There's so much more I could say about this topic, but I try my best not to have these videos be forever long. So again, y'all, I hope that you receive this. I hope that you're encouraged, and I hope that you realize, please, I find myself in these videos saying, please, I'm not begging you to hear me. It's for you. It's for you, because I know what it is to be in a land of delay and hindrance longer than you need to be. I know what that feels like. It sucks. You feel stuck. You feel confused. You don't know which way to go. And the longer you stay there, the less you trust yourself, the less you listen to your gut or your intuition, the less you hear the Holy Spirit's voice. The longer you stay in this place, God always gives it to me. He says, load the bar. The longer you stay there, the harder it is to get out. So if you, and I want you to know, if you think it's hard now, jump now, please. What's waiting for you on the other side is the next level of your life. And there's really literally nothing to be afraid of, right? We know that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but he's given us the spirit of peace, love, and a sound mind. Sometimes you got to remind yourself of that. I remind myself of that pretty much every day. If I find myself feeling a little anxious, God did not give anxiety to me. He gave me the spirit of peace, love, and a sound mind. And if you need to remind yourself of that, look it up, read the scripture for yourself, maybe write it down on a 3x5 card so you can keep it posted somewhere. But understand you operate from a place of the spirit of peace, love, and a sound mind. So anytime you start feeling anything opposite of that, anxious, worried, stressed, overwhelmed. Wait a minute. God says be anxious for nothing. I'm not going to be anxious for this. God says that he didn't give us a spirit of fear. So fear is trying to come up. That don't belong to me. Right? You have to consciously do it. God tells us to pull down every vain imagination, every vain thought that we have. Anything that is not like him, pull it down, and you have the authority to do it. So I love you. I appreciate you guys, and I hope that you hear what I have to say. I promise you, my desire is that others start to see the greatness in them. It took me until now to see it in myself. All right? I love y'all. Talk to you soon.
I keep going back to what I used to know. Love, please hold my hand as I go down this road.